Figure 4.9 Gradebook.java. Once again, we're going to take a look at the Gradebook class in this example, and the key thing that we've changed in the example is the implementation of the determine class average method. In the prior example, we used counter-controlled repetition via a while loop to iterate 10 times, read in 10 grades, and then calculate the average of those 10 grades and display the results. In this example, we're going to use sentinel controlled repetition, again with the while loop, and we're going to enable the user to enter an arbitrary number of grades. Now, the vast majority of the gradebook is identical to the last example. We still have our class gradebook with its one private instance variable called course name of type string. We still provide the constructor to initialize that course name variable and the set and get course name methods to enable us to manipulate that course name. Our display message method is still provided to display the welcome to the gradebook, and then we have our determine class average method. Now, in this version of the method, we've got 4 local variables once again to manipulate the values inside the program, 3 integers representing the total, the grade counter, and the grade, and a double in which we will store the average. Now, our total once again is initialized to 0 down here at line 48. Our grade counter this time is not initialized to 1, but rather to 0, because now we're going to use it to keep track of how many grades have been input so far, whereas in the last version of the program we were using it to keep track of what grade number was about to be input. We'll still store our grades in the integer called grade, and we're still going to read them in as whole number values in this example. Now, in the sentinel controlled loop, we prompt the user before we even enter the loop to enter a grade or -1 if they want to quit. -1 is our sentinel or flag value, and we used -1 because it's not a valid grade, so it's a good value to use as a sentinel. We read in the first grade from the user, and this could even be the sentinel value. If it is the sentinel value of -1, this condition at line 57 will be false and will break out of the loop immediately without ever doing any of the calculations, and that would indicate that the user chose not to input any grades. On the other hand, if it's a non-1 value, then it will be considered a valid grade for the purpose of this example. So we're assuming that the user is going to enter a proper grade value of 0 to 100, but we probably should implement some validity checking on the individual input values as well. Now, once we read in the value and get into the body of the loop, we'll add the grade to the total and store it in the total variable. We'll add 1 to the grade counter to indicate that we just got a valid grade. And then we will prompt the user to enter the next grade and read in the next grade at the very bottom of the loop. That enables us immediately to go back to the top of the loop and test the grade we just input to see if it's the sentinel, and if it's not, we'll go back in and calculate the total again, add 1 to the grade counter, etc. When the user eventually types -1, we'll wind up in this if-else statement at the bottom of main, in which we first determine if the grade counter is not equal to 0, which would indicate that at least 1 grade was entered by the user. In that case, we're going to perform the calculation in which we divide total by grade counter. However, we're using a cast operator on the variable total, and the cast operator has higher precedence than the divide operator. So what happens first is we get a temporary copy of the total variable that has a double value. So if total was 795, the double value will be 795.0, and then we'll have a double divided by an integer. And in Java, as well as many other languages such as C, C++, C#, Visual Basic, when you have a double divided by an integer, you get a double result because the system implicitly converts the other integer value to a double. So the result of doing this double cast is forcing this expression to become a double divided by a double. Therefore, we're going to get a double result, which we will assign to the double variable named average. Then at lines 75 and 76, we'll output the grade counter and total variables so we know how many grades were entered and what their total was. And at line 77, we will calculate the class, or display, the class average, and notice once again the use of the %.2f to indicate that we want to display a floating point number with 2 digits to the right of the decimal point. Also notice the use of the braces to specify that this if statement has multiple statements in its body. By default, all of the control statements in Java, with the exception of the switch statement, are not required to have curly braces because they assume they have only one statement in their bodies. If you want to include multiple statements in the body of any of these control statements, you must wrap them in curly braces. In the case of the switch statement, the curly braces are required, and you can then provide as many cases as you want in a switch, and we'll take a look at a switch in another example. On the other hand, going back to line 69 here, if the grade counter is equal to 0, that would mean no grades were entered, and we will print that out at the command prompt.
Looking to advance your career by acquiring new skills? Tired of expensive off-site training programs? Wish you could learn from the best instructors in the industry? Look no further than live lessons. Self-paced, personal video instruction by the world's leading technology publishers. Each live lesson comes with a DVD featuring 3 to 4 hours of instructor-led classroom training, sample program code that allows you to work along with your personal instructor, and an example-rich study guide. Live lessons allow you to watch the entire course from start to finish, or navigate directly to any of the individual lessons. You'll literally watch over the shoulder of your instructor as he shows you how to build state-of-the-art applications. Live lessons, the power of the world's leading technology experts at your fingertips. To learn more, visit mylivelessons.com today.